One phrase that truly broke through the noise, united people across the political spectrum, and just stuck. It has to be Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. I mean, it's wild how universally recognized that statement became.
It really is. You'd see it everywhere. Graffiti, memes, shouted at rallies for completely unrelated causes. It became the shorthand for a much larger sentiment, didn't it?
Absolutely. It's fascinating because in an era of such deep political polarization, this particular conspiracy theory managed to be one of the few things that, for a moment, seemed to bridge the divide. You had people from the far left and the far right nodding in agreement.
Yeah, it was like a momentary truce. Like, we might disagree on literally everything else, but on this one thing, we're aligned. What do you think it was about that specific situation that allowed it to transcend the usual tribalism?
I think part of it was the sheer absurdity of the official narrative. A high-profile inmate on suicide watch with surveillance issues found dead in his cell? It just felt too convenient for too many powerful people. The story itself felt incomplete.
And it tapped into this deep-seated public distrust of institutions and the elite. It wasn't just about Epstein. It was about the idea that there's a secret, powerful cabal operating above the law. That's a narrative that resonates with a lot of people who feel disenfranchised, regardless of their political leanings.
Right, because everyone, whether they're on the left or the right, can relate to feeling like the system is rigged against them in some way. For the left, it's about powerful capitalists exploiting the weak. For the right, it's about a deep state or corrupt government officials. Epstein seemed to embody both of those fears.
Exactly. He was a symbol. He represented unchecked wealth, access to powerful people, and allegations of horrific crimes. His death, under those circumstances, felt like the ultimate proof that the rules just don't apply to certain individuals and their associates.
And let's not forget the sheer magnitude of the names associated with him. The client list, the connections to politicians, royalty, business moguls. The potential for what he might reveal if he actually testified was enormous. That fueled the idea that he was silenced.
I remember seeing it pop up in the weirdest places, like at a football game, someone holding up a sign, or a news reporter accidentally saying it on air. It became a cultural phenomenon that just wouldn't die down.
The meme factor was huge. Memes have a way of simplifying complex narratives and making them highly shareable, and this one had all the ingredients: a mysterious death, powerful figures, a catchy phrase. It was perfect meme fodder.
It also became a litmus test, didn't it? If someone expressed skepticism about the official story, it signaled a certain kind of critical thinking, or at least a willingness to question authority. And that, surprisingly, was a shared trait across the political spectrum.
It felt like a moment where the internet, despite all its flaws and echo chambers, actually created a shared understanding, or at least a shared suspicion, among disparate groups, which is pretty rare.
But it's also a double-edged sword, right? On one hand, it highlights a valid concern about accountability for the powerful. On the other, it can feed into a broader culture of distrust that makes it hard to discern truth from fiction on anything.
That's the core dilemma. The underlying sentiment that powerful people often escape justice is a legitimate one that fuels a lot of resentment. When a situation appears to confirm that bias so perfectly, it's hard for people to accept an alternative explanation, especially if it seems to absolve those in power.
So, you think it wasn't just about a specific event, but more about people projecting their existing anxieties and frustrations onto this one very public, very suspicious incident?
Absolutely. It became a vessel for those feelings. Epstein Didn't Kill Himself wasn't just a statement about Epstein. It was a statement about how the world really works, according to a lot of people. It was a cry for justice, or at least a recognition of injustice, that felt universally relatable.
And the fact that it crossed the aisle, as we've said, makes it even more potent. It showed that despite all the manufactured outrage and political theater, there are some fundamental issues regarding power and corruption that genuinely bother almost everyone, regardless of their declared ideology.
It's almost like a baseline agreement that there are shadowy figures out there doing shadowy things, and the official stories often don't tell the whole truth. That's a pretty bleak but widely held view, isn't it?
It is, and it speaks to a deep sense of powerlessness, I think. When you feel like you can't influence the big decisions or that the people at the top are untouchable, then something like the Epstein case feels like proof of that helplessness.
Which then feeds into the desire for an alternative narrative, one that explains away the official story with something more dramatic, more conspiratorial. Because if it's just incompetence or a string of bad luck, that's almost less satisfying than a deliberate act.
True, a grand conspiracy feels like it has a certain logic, a certain narrative arc, even if it's a terrifying one. powerful people murdered him to keep him quiet is a more digestible story than a series of systemic failures led to a man on suicide watch successfully killing himself.
Yeah, the latter is frustratingly mundane in its horror, you know? The idea that it could just be a colossal screw-up, that even in the highest security prisons things can go so wrong, that's almost more unsettling for some than a deliberate, targeted hit.
Exactly. A deliberate act implies agency, a master plan. Incompetence implies chaos, which is often far more frightening, but people tend to prefer a bad guy over an uncontrollable, broken system. So, what does that say about where we are now, culturally, politically? That this phrase, this theory, still carries so much weight and recognition.
I think it means that the issues of accountability, transparency, and the perceived untouchability of the elite haven't gone anywhere. If anything, they've probably intensified. The phrase might be less prevalent in daily conversation now, but the sentiment it represents is still very much alive.
It's a testament to the enduring power of narrative, especially when it taps into pre-existing anxieties. And it's a stark reminder that when official explanations strain credulity, the public will fill that void with their own interpretations, often driven by their deepest fears about how power operates.
It's almost like a constant, quiet protest, a way of saying, we see you, we know what's going on, and we're not buying it, even if it is never explicitly defined. It's the ultimate wink-wink, nudge-nudge of our time.
And it's a phrase that will probably live on for generations, won't it? Like the grassy knoll, it's entered the lexicon as a symbol of unexplained events and powerful secrets.
I think so. It represents a particular moment in history where distrust reached a critical mass, and a single, dramatic event became the focal point for all that pent-up skepticism. It's a modern myth, in a way, born of very real frustrations.
Well, there you have it. The phrase that united a divided nation, if only for a moment, around one very dark, very persistent question. Thanks for diving into this with me today, Ivy and Zoe.
Always a pleasure, RJ. It's a truly fascinating case study in public perception and the power of narrative.
Thanks for having us. It's definitely one of those topics that keeps you thinking long after the conversation ends.